Goldfinger is, in a lot of ways, it's the quintessential Bond movie. We've already said that, but it has a lot of the fun traits that a lot of the movies adapt, but also at the same time, it still has kind of the same spirit of these earlier two movies. It's kind of an Old Testament, New Testament in one. It's a thriller. It has some tension. Is it a little more fun, kind of a romp than the other two?
Yeah.
Absolutely, but it's pitch perfect. The opening sequence is Bond setting off explosives somewhere. he
That's a shocking start. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the he's got the like little pigeon over his cowl of his swimsuit. It's hilarious, but awesome. Like it's a good disguise. It's not something completely, unbelievable. He goes in.
Well, if you saw it from a distance,
Right,
it's not like that wouldn't work.
right,
Yeah.
right. And he goes in, and he has the last rendezvous with this girl, and that if it was its own Bond movie, I guess she would have been the Bond girl of that particular story. They're in they're in a room. It's about to leave, and this is very Hitchcockian. In the reflection of her eye, he sees an attacker,
Yeah.
um, and very not Hitchcockian. He gets thrown into a tub with a plugged-in electrical device, and he of course fries and a one-liner, shocking, positively shocking. And we go into what is arguably the greatest Bond song. Shirley Bassey's Goldfinger is it's what so many of these songs try to emulate. It's a perfect song, I think. It's great. The music itself is awesome, and it's used wonderfully in the score. I could go on about this one forever. It's one of my favorite Bond movies. It's one of my favorite movies in general, but it's just a great story. And I'm not going to talk about every plot line, but you have a lot of intrigue, um, the mystery with Bond kind of exploring and looking into Auric Goldfinger, who is quite possibly, arguably, I mean, maybe they're better, but he's one of the best Bond villains. And he's such a great character. He has so many great lines. And again, the kind of banner that he has with Bond throughout the film is key to my enjoyment of it. They have so many run-ins, and some of them are sinister, and some of them are not. Of course, there's the classic "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." But there's also the scenes where he's at his manor in Kentucky, where they're having to kind of tolerate each other's company, and I enjoy those scenes just as much. Of course, the Bond girl. Well, here we've got a few. We've got a few Bond girls. I mean, obviously, there's one. The main one is Pussy Galore. Honor Blackman just recently passed away. That played Pussy, but she, again, resourceful, intelligent, not a damsel in distress. Actually, one of the villains until the last act of the movie. But starting out, we have, Jill Masterson, this beautiful girl that Bond meets in Miami that's with Goldfinger. And she's murdered, which is kind of what leads to it's part of the plot. She's painted in gold, which is an iconic image. You have Tilly Masterson, who is her sister seeking revenge, and she's a really lousy shot with a rifle. Uh,
To say the least. Yeah. But
but, but again, and you think, okay, she's going to be the Bond girl, and ultimately she's not because she meets an untimely death as well. And I like that aspect of it because the plot, if you were watching this and you had not seen Goldfinger a million times like us, that would be, that would be kind of shocking, unexpected. You have two characters that really could have fit the form of what you would think would be the Bond girl of the movie, dying relatively early in it. And there's just so many good points to this movie. You have Odd Job, one of the most iconic henchmen in the series, and he's not Redford. He's definitely more brawn than brains. Their fight, again, shocking, positively shocking. It's a Bond's fight at the end with him is fantastic. It's one of my favorite. I kind of get goosebumps when I see it because it's just so well played. It's a great moment. I think with the style of the 60s, the climaxes of these movies aren't necessarily what audiences today would, blow their minds. But I think for what they had, the tension in this climax in the big, battle at Fort Knox, it's wonderful. It's so well played. There are different dynamics to everything. You have Odd Job inside. You have all this poisonous gas that's supposedly been leaked, and all of Bond's help, including Leiter, already played by another actor early on, but and not as iconic, but whatever. But whatever. But it's you have all this going on, and Bond is seemingly down to like his last wits trying to win. This is not Bond like easily winning by any means. Even though it's more of a romp, it's still a struggle, and it's still a tense adventure. And I love that about it. And I do think that it is the best of the Connery era. So definitely, I give it a 007 out of 007.
Thinking about the action, and like obviously it's not in a certain sense spectacular, like in terms of like so many different explosions or action beats and like intricate choreography and stuff. What you have is incredibly well built and structured and put together. And it reminds me of something that I forgot to say about From Russia with Love, which was like the scene with the helicopter, um, and how well built the
Yes.
action is there. And part of it is the pacing, and that's true in Goldfinger as well. Like the editing, the pacing of it is part of the intensity. Like when Oddjob in Goldfinger is running down those steps, uh, it's just so intense, and there's every reason for it
Yeah.
to be silly, and yet it's not silly at all. It completely has this fantastic action tension that I think works really well. Um, you already mentioned the Bond women that I think are all well played throughout and play a pivotal role, but also worth mentioning uh, Goldfinger himself is one of the best villains, and how structurally he's really well built throughout the story in a way that you don't have this exact same sense of in either of the previous two movies. That's part of
Right.
why Goldfinger works as a formula the way it does, is because you actually have this Bond villain that plays a pivotal role throughout and has a relationship with Bond. And it's not like that is strictly necessary, but it is a part of the formula, is the way that dynamic plays out. And another reason I think Goldfinger works so well, is that Bond is consistently chided for being Bond throughout the entire movie. Like right from the get go, they say, "Bond, why did you fail here at the beginning? It's because you had the hots for this chick, didn't you? And that's why you lost sight of the prize, and you weren't on top of Goldfinger the way you were. Is because you were in bed with this woman, uh, with with Jill Masterson, and turned obviously suffocated in gold paint." But yeah, he's chided for that, and then you actually see him kind of own up to it and be like, "Yeah, you're right. I kind of need to focus and be a spy here." And that's something that I don't think gets enough credit, is the way that Goldfinger really works on that level of taking the wind out of his sails. and making him kind of earn his keep, so to speak, as a spy, and not just as some guy who walks into the room and is all suave and gets the job done. Like he's imprisoned and doesn't have it all figured out, and he ends up kind of being saved by Pussy, so to speak. And that's a big part of the appeal of Goldfinger is the way that structurally works and the way it dramatically works. And I say dramatically, it is still fantasy in more of a sense than either of the previous two movies. Obviously, I mentioned fantasy in both of all these movies so far as an important aspect. You know, the cheekiness, the way that it's just a fun action adventure storyline, but it really plays up in Goldfinger with things like the gold laser, which is like the first time you've had a laser on screen in a movie, and it's a gold laser, and boy is that perfect. You know, like it's an iconic scene of him being on a table and Goldfinger, you know,
Yes.
potentially gonna saw him in half with a laser beam. But it's like it fits Goldfinger as a character perfectly too. Like, of course, this guy would use gold as a laser, you know, and I just love the heightened sensibility that you have with it. But it's definitely a perfect 007 on our scale. It is what it is for a good reason. I will say this though, and this isn't really even a criticism, it's just something I find really funny when he's asking for the cooperation of all these other people for his plan, all these other evil villains and their money, and the one guy that says, "No, I don't want a part of this. This sounds absurd," and everybody else gets killed in the
His
room with
name's
gas.
Solo.
Solo leaves, they
Right.
allow him to leave up until they kill him and crush him. And there's absolutely zero reason um, that they needed to do that. They could have just killed him in the room with everybody else with gas. But they're like, "Oh no, you want to leave? You go
Right.
ahead and leave, and we'll just wait to kill you miles down the road." Um, eh, Zero reason they needed to do that. It's just an unnecessary waste of time. Um, but
Right.
I guess they're okay with the theatrics for themselves. Like it probably entertains Goldfinger and Oddjob to
Right.
let that play out. Or maybe Oddjob just really wanted to go for a drive. I don't know.
We would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Aston Martin DB5,
Oh
which
yeah,
is again, this is the iconic Bond car. This is the iconic Q uh, gadget. This is kind of what establishes Q being a fan favorite. And that car, of course, and all the gadgets and the sequence with the factory and Bond using all the ejector seat and all the other little trinkets. And again, it's in a scene where he loses. um, it's not
right.
a it's funny that it's not this thing that saves the day and he uses it to win or anything like that. That he he eventually gets captured and wrecks of Goldfinger and ends up being a staple of having a car with all these gadgets and it persists to this day. As of Spectre, the Bond franchise embraces this.
And I do have to mention too, not only is Goldfinger a great character, but the name Auric Goldfinger is friggin' fantastic too, in the best fantastic
It
sense of the
is.
term. The name, the performance, the everything, it's pretty perfect and spot on for what you want out of a Bond villain.